So in this video, I'm going to show you the true power of what VBA can do and how robust it truly is. So I've created this Jeopardy game and I've used it in staff meetings and team building events. And so what it is essentially just using all the cells to work like the game show Jeopardy. And so the main tab here is this Jeopardy tab is all just formatting and some conditional formatting. So that's fairly simple. That's not the VBA part. But the VBA is going to be where these buttons up here come in and how it navigates throughout the different functions. So the first thing to discuss is this ribbon up here. And so this is where all the navigation and setup is done. And this was just a RibbonX XML file that's embedded in the XLSM file. And the first thing I do is I hide all of the Excel tabs, the default Excel tabs. Using the ID MSO is always going to be a default Excel Microsoft Office function. So I'm hiding all those tabs. And then I create my own Jeopardy tab with all the different buttons that I'm going to use. And these actually can hook into events too. So I'll actually be able to update the ribbon based on when scores change and things like that. And I'll show you how to do that here. But the first button, I'll just show you. So screen sizes can differ, and especially if you plug this into a projector and you're trying to play, it can change. Well, I have a scale board button. So I click that, and it'll actually use the visible range, and it will tell you what is visible on that, and then you can actually go in and see. And so to see what that is, I have a button or a macro called set scale, and it literally just loops through the active Windows zoom settings until it finds one that fits the entire thing. And so even if I was fully zoomed in way too much, I click scale, it'll actually bring me back down. And now my next button is the edit questions button. So these are all the questions that are behind those cells. And so this can be edited for what you want. Now, in times past, I've used this for staff meetings. It's usually questions and categories about the organization or our customers or what we're doing. And so for this example, I just used ChatGPT to actually create me some. And you can actually use ChatGPT to create hundreds of these with all the different types of questions and categories. And this is made with 2 rounds. And so you can actually tell ChatGPT, generate me 6 categories with 5 questions each, Jeopardy style, and it'll actually generate this for you. And you can just copy and paste it, and you can have a bunch of different games. And then Final Jeopardy is just like 1 category, 1 question, and that's at the end. And I've even made this so it's printable. So if you actually format the rounds, like you can actually print this out, so whoever's running the game can print this out and have all the questions and answers straight up beforehand. But so that's also just kind of basic formatting there. And I just have this macro. This just hides it and unhides it, so you can adjust those questions or change them or update them. And so the next button is the edit players. So just like in the Jeopardy game, there's 3 players. Well, you can set your own names right here. So I just say John, Cindy, and Tom, and then I can click OK. And it'll actually update in the ribbon those names. So then you actually have them tied together. And then if you ever just want to reset them back, you can just hit reset and that'll put it back to player 1, 2, and 3. So now the game is all configured. It's time to play. Well, this game is already set up for you, but say something is saved last time or some of these are gone, I can click reset game. And this is where I'm using a VBA function that pulls these 30 cells and it pulls a random number and it puts the number in, just like in the real game out there. And to show you how I do that, in the setup module, I have a startup round action. So essentially I'm shuffling those there and I just go through them one at a time. And I use a sleep function, which I have to pull from the kernel 32, which is coming from Windows. So this wouldn't work on Mac, but Excel does have a bit ability to wait, but it can only wait for 1 second. If I want to do less than that, I have to actually pull the sleep function from the Windows kernel. And so I set it as to wait every, I think, 200 milliseconds in between. And so it's just going to essentially put those questions up there. And that's just for animation purposes. And now to actually play the game. So just like in regular Jeopardy, you would have somebody select a category and a value. Well, I can hook into the double click action. And I've set this up so these are every cell except for the valued cells are locked. So you can't even click on this. You can't click outside. You can scroll up and down, but it's not really going to help. But the only things you can select are these cells. And so a double click an actual value, and then it'll actually pull the question for you. And what it does is actually hides the game board, pulls out a question tab, and theoretically answer in the in the Jeopardy game. But so then you have this question. And when I went to the questions tab, you'll notice that the buttons up here became available. And so I can say, oh, my player two here, Cindy, she got it right. So I click the green check and it'll actually go back to the game board and it'll mark that one as gone. So now if I double click on this one again, it's not going to do anything. And now these are grayed out. Cindy scores now 600. So how that is done is in the actual sheet events. And so when I'm on the game board, I have it set to before a double click. So essentially I'm going to, whenever I double click on this sheet, I'm going to run this macro. And when you do tie into this event, you have to use the target as a range, which will be the actual cell that you're selected on, and cancel as Boolean. So if I don't cancel, and I actually cancel it here because if I don't cancel, it'll actually as if I'm going to edit the cell. But saying cancel to true, essentially, I'm canceling that double click at the end of it. And so I'm going to run my macro, which I determine where the cell is. And when I determine what the cell is, I'm going to either go to a daily double or go to a question. And so when it goes to a question, I have a macro that goes to sheet, which essentially is going to unhide, it's going to hide the Jeopardy sheet and unhide the question sheet. And the question sheet has a function that when the sheet is activated, which means it's selected, it's going to actually enable those buttons right here. And then on the actual question sheet, when I double click, it determines whether the question was answered and whether to add the score. And these buttons up here have their own function where they're actually going to update the score based on which one you click. And that's how that all works. And so when you update the score, it'll go back to the game board. And so essentially, I'm hooking into the double click event of the sheet. And so I'm kind of intercepting it and doing my own stuff rather than what Excel wants to do. And so just like in regular, I can actually go through and play. I can do like 800 and say, oh, this person got that one wrong. And when it's wrong, it doesn't go back because technically somebody else can answer. And so let's get that person right. You know, you can, so it just goes all the way through. Now, this function also has, just like the regular, it has a daily double, which is randomized. So you never know which cell is going to have the daily double. Anytime you hit reset game or go to the next round, it's going to randomize that daily double. And so now it'll say, daily double. And then I double click here, just like in the other sheets, I handled the double click. It's going to try to remember who got the last question right. But you say, player three is wagering. Let's just say I wagered 1,000 and then I click continue. And so now here's the question. And if player three got it right or wrong, let's just say he got it right, it knows to add 1,000 in there. So this works just like the game does in real life. And then let's just say I'm done with this round. Say I'm in a staff meeting. I don't necessarily have time for all of them. I click on next round and then it'll take me to round two and it'll do the same thing. The values will be doubled. And then the thing works just the same. So I can go through and play the game just as much as the previous round. And then once you're done with that round, you can go to the next round, and this will be Final Jeopardy, just like the game show. And so, like, say my question is that, and then I can double click. It gives me the question. I double click again, and it gives me the answer. And then I double click one more time, and it'll actually, and that's where you can actually reveal your wagers, and you put in the wager, whether the player got it correct or incorrect. And let's just say this person wagered it all and actually got it incorrect. This one wagered 1,000. And this one wagered $1 and they all got it correct. We're just going to say finish. And then you'll notice that the player scores got updated for depending on what they did, and it'll actually tell you who won. So how I get this all to work is I have a couple of hidden sheets, and I have like a references tab, which will actually tell me which cells are been completed, which ones haven't, and the names and stuff like that. And because I reference all of these when I go to actually update the ribbon, because the ribbon is, you have to update it one at a time. You can't necessarily just have a call to action. What you can have is that you refresh the ribbon and the ribbon can read from a sheet. So this is the static data. The actual code itself is mostly done through event handlers in the code behind files for the actual sheets. Um, but I do have some forms here, and like if you go into form, the forms also handle different events that can happen. A lot of these cells actually reference custom functions and get their values from functions in the VBA. So like get question is that, go to sheet is that. And if I go down here, like update score is a particular function that'll actually update the ribbon. And updating the ribbon is not necessarily simple. The custom UI can actually have an onload function, which will run when the workbook is opened. It's kind of like the auto open event of this workbook function over here in this workbook. So it's very similar, but it's designed for the ribbon itself, and it actually passes a ribbon UI element. And so what I do is I have to put that ribbon UI element into a global ribbon element so I can save it, because otherwise it would just it would dispose of it immediately. So I put it in a global variable that saves it, and that allows me to actually invalidate the controls, which essentially means recalculate. So if I update a player's name, I actually have to update the player's name and then invalidate the control to get the new name and put it in the ribbon. And so I have this refresh control that uses the G ribbon. And occasionally, if you make adjustments to the code, it can actually lose your global variable. And so sometimes the G ribbon goes to blank. And so essentially, I got to restart the workbook. But that's only if I'm editing code at the time. But otherwise, as long as you have to invalidate every control, but that'll actually update the ribbon to give you all the functions up here. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to hide this again. And then, so the game's over. I can click reset game, and that'll take me back to round one. And it'll do the little animation of putting all the values up there. And we're done. And we're back to nothing. And I even have a little reset players, so I can set the players' names back to blank when I'm done with them. And so that's it. So I will provide a link at the bottom to where you can get this workbook. It's pretty complicated code, but I would highly recommend going through it and learning some stuff about this. It is too complicated to do just a video of creating this, because this would take a long time. But I just wanted to do this as a testament to how powerful VBA truly is. Because, I mean, some people just think it's about, automating copy paste functions, but you can actually build applications using Excel and VBA. I hope you like this video. Please like and subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.